What if you stumbled upon an ancient language that could unlock hidden powers? Would you risk everything to speak it, knowing it could reshape your mind, and even reality itself? Well, in the remote valley of Kathira, hidden from maps and known only to a handful of locals, Miriam and her research team set up their camp near the ruins they'd spent years searching for. This discovery was a breakthrough, promising a wealth of knowledge about an ancient, long-lost civilization known only in fragmented myths and cryptic symbols left on pottery shards scattered throughout the region. The valley itself was like a land out of time. Mist drifted constantly between the cliffs, thick trees stretched their twisted roots along craggy rocks, and the air was filled with an eerie stillness, as if the earth held its breath. Miriam had always been drawn to places like this, places that felt secretive, tucked away from the bustling modern world. Here, the past was more vivid than the present, a powerful energy seeming to pulse beneath the soil. One evening, as her team was preparing their latest findings, an assistant named Sam found a set of tablets buried deep within a stone alcove. At first, they seemed like ordinary, though well-preserved artifacts. But as they cleaned the mud from the carvings, the symbols etched into the stone began to reveal themselves. Unlike anything the team had seen before, they weren't just pictographs or abstract markings, but carried a distinct, intricate pattern, an ancient language Miriam couldn't place. As the team analyzed the symbols, they were stumped. None of the usual translation methods worked. It was Sam who first noticed something strange. After spending hours trying to decipher one particularly complex set of glyphs, he started muttering them aloud, almost unconsciously. When he spoke the symbols, he felt a strange sensation, like a pulse or rhythm that vibrated in his chest and tingled in his fingertips. A breeze stirred, though the air had been still all day. His vision seemed to sharpen, as though he were seeing not just the world but the layers beneath it. He swore he heard whispers, distant and faint, as if someone or something was speaking back to him. Words spread among the team. The language, it seemed, was more than just written symbols. When spoken, it felt as if the words themselves were imbued with something otherworldly. Over the following days, others began experimenting with the symbols, speaking fragments aloud. Each time they did, they felt empowered, almost as if the language granted them fleeting, unnatural abilities. One researcher, Elena, found she could feel the life force of the trees and plants around her, like a green energy threading through her veins. Another, Tomas, claimed he could sense the thoughts of animals, catching glimpses of their primal urges and instincts. Miriam grew excited but cautious. Power was intoxicating, yes, but languages were not supposed to feel alive, and certainly not like this. She delved into her research, searching the ruins and cross-referencing artifacts for any indication of what this civilization might have done with such a potent form of communication. As the team grew more daring, they started speaking longer phrases, piecing together what they could of the language's structure. But as they did, strange things began happening. It started small, lights flickering when there was no source, strange patterns appearing in the soil, like spirals that seemed to grow and shift on their own. The trees seemed to watch them, bending slightly as if attuned to the presence of their voices. Their campfires burned brighter, but in unnatural hues, casting shadows that stretched out far beyond the light. Their dreams grew vivid, unsettling. Each night, they dreamed of the valley as it might have been long ago, filled with figures shrouded in robes, chanting in the language, raising their arms to the sky as storms gathered. In the visions, the ancient people seemed both exalted and terrified, wielding immense power but cowering from an unseen force. Miriam sensed that they were no longer observing history, but somehow experiencing it firsthand. In the mornings, each member of the team awoke shaken, unable to shake the feeling that the people in the dreams were trying to warn them. Then came the first real incident. As Sam read a complex series of symbols aloud one night, he collapsed mid-sentence, clutching his head. He described feeling as though his own memories were being overwritten, his thoughts blending with memories of another life, one that wasn't his. He spoke of places he'd never seen, faces he didn't know, but could remember as vividly as his own family. For hours after, he could only speak in the ancient language, his words incomprehensible to the rest. It was as if the language was taking hold of him, as if it were a living entity that demanded space in his mind. Miriam grew increasingly wary. The language was unlike anything known to science or linguistics. She realized with a sinking feeling that it seemed to be binding them to something ancient and deeply unnatural. Her suspicions were confirmed when she uncovered the final, chilling piece of the puzzle. A series of symbols carved into the stone walls of a hidden chamber. These carvings, when translated, recounted a story of a civilization that had once held the power to shape reality with their words, to commune with the forces of the earth itself. But in their pride, they had gone too far, attempting to command powers beyond their control. The language had driven them mad, fracturing their minds and warping their world into a twisted, chaotic version of itself. In a final act of desperation, the last members of the civilization had sacrificed themselves, binding their souls to the valley to keep the language and the knowledge it bestowed locked away forever. They had created a seal, a curse, so that anyone who tried to use the language would suffer the same fate. Terrified, Miriam called an emergency meeting, urging her team to stop their experiments. But by then it was too late. Some of her colleagues were addicted to the power, refusing to believe the ancient warnings. Tomas, for one, argued that the ancient civilization simply hadn't understood the language's true potential. He claimed they were on the brink of something extraordinary, something humanity needed. As Tomas spoke, however, a fierce wind began to howl through the valley, swirling around them. The ground trembled, and the trees seemed to lean in, their branches clawing toward the group. Shadows lengthened, deepening into strange shapes that seemed to leer and whisper in voices that mimicked their own. Miriam could see the desperation in Tomas's eyes. He was no longer speaking as himself. The language had taken hold of him, shaping his thoughts to its will. Desperate, Miriam knew there was only one option left. They had to erase their knowledge of the language entirely, lest it continue to spread. She found the symbols for the ancient sealing ritual carved in the hidden chamber, faint with age, and assembled the team, urging them to join her. The language, she realized, was an entity of its own, a parasitic force that fed on those who spoke it, tethering them to its power forever. She warned them that only by erasing their memories of the language could they free themselves and protect the world from its influence. One by one, they took turns speaking the words that would erase the knowledge of the language from their minds. With each phrase, Miriam felt pieces of her own memories slip away, bits of the valley's history and her team's discoveries dissolving. The language fought back, voices screaming in her mind, but she pressed on, knowing it was the only way to keep their world safe. When they finally spoke the last word, the valley fell silent. The mist lifted, the shadows faded, and the strange, twisted energy in the air dispersed, as if the valley were returning to a natural state. Exhausted, the team left Kathira in silence, carrying only a vague sense of loss, as though something precious had been sacrificed, though they couldn't remember what. They returned to their ordinary lives, but each was haunted by a subtle, unshakable feeling that they had glimpsed something beyond comprehension, something terrible and beautiful. They felt it in the quiet moments, a faint whisper that could never quite be silenced. In that whisper was a remnant of the language, a haunting echo of a knowledge too vast for any mind to hold, and a world that was never meant to be understood. As the researchers left the valley, the ancient language was once again sealed away, but at a cost. They'd glimpsed a power beyond comprehension, one humanity was never meant to wield. The whispers of that lost language still linger, tempting anyone who dares listen. Could you resist the call? If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments. Would you risk using the language, or would you walk away? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of ancient mysteries and forgotten powers, and hit the bell so you never miss a tale that'll keep you wondering what secrets might be hidden in our world.